Welcome to Just My 2 cents. No slogans, no sides, just my take. This episode is a masterclass in how statistics, feelings, and blame get mixed together in modern debates, from custody courts to marriage counseling, from emotions to crime. We're unpacking what's actually being said and what's being avoided. No yelling, no safe spaces, just logic. Welcome back to Just My 2 cents.
And the first prompt is, women have more privileges today than men. Okay, anyone who feels strongly can speak.
I think women in many ways have more privileges, but they also have more oppressions. And I think both of these things have to be weighed in when you're talking about people's social power, right? It's really important to understand that women face significant oppressions, significant issues. And so while some of the privileges that we can identify, like courts tend to be more lenient to them, for example, if there's a situation, for example, of custody, women are going to be favored in that situation. They also have less choice with their bodies, right? They have issues where with hiring, if they try to negotiate, they'll be seen as caustic and negative because they're kind of our stereotypical presumptions of how women have to be.
So the claim is women get seen negatively just for negotiating salary because of how women are seen. I'm going to push back on that. Negotiation isn't punished. Bad negotiation is, and that applies to everyone. If you come in prepared, market aware, and you can justify your number, employers respect it. If you can't, they don't, regardless of gender. What's interesting is we jump straight to bias instead of asking the harder question, was the ask realistic? Was the value clearly communicated? Because turning every tough outcome into discrimination doesn't empower women. It removes feedback. Negotiation is a skill, not a personality test. But hey, that's just my 2 cents.
And these things impact women significantly. That's just why I would say they have less political power overall as well.
Well, just one of those things was not true in regards to custody decisions in this country. In fact, men are more likely to receive custody of their children if they ask for it. If men seek custody in a court in the United States of America, statistically, they are 90% likely to receive more custody or possibly even exactly what they were asking for. I would just say that women are not more likely to receive custody of children in court. Men are. Women just are the ones who more receive custody in court.
It's true. It's only 4%. Only 4% of men fight for custody of their children.
And when they do, it's successful 90% of the time. So that would tell me that court actually favors men.
So the claim is only about 4% of men fight for custody, and when they do, they win most of the time. Therefore, the courts favor men. That logic is upside down. If courts favored men, we'd see more men getting custody by default, not fewer men even trying. What that stat actually suggests is selection bias. The men who go to court usually do so when they already have strong evidence, time, resources, or primary parent involvement. Winning a case doesn't mean the system favors you. It means you met the bar. And let's be honest, if courts truly favored fathers, deadbeat dad wouldn't be a cultural stereotype. Low participation plus high success doesn't prove bias. It proves that custody battles are expensive, risky, and most men don't see the odds as worth it.
I understand that there's kind of this anecdote that family court does in fact favor women, but it just so happens that women are more likely to want custody of their children. And that's where that mythology comes from.
I would disagree. You mentioned that men get custody when they ask for it, and that presumes that women don't have to ask for it. Why doesn't it begin equal and men not having to ask for custody if they are actually full parents, just
Sure.
like the mom?
Sure, that's a great question. I think it's really important that we have a conversation that our laws are written by men. Our courts are ruled by men. So if you have some concern about what a court presumes, well, that's a conversation to have with men too. They're the ones who wrote the laws.
So when the anti-feminist says courts should default to 50-50 custody, the response is basically, well, men wrote the laws, men run the courts. Talk to men. That's not an argument. That's a dodge. Pointing out who built the system doesn't address whether the system is fair now. If something is unjust, blaming the people currently harmed by it for its origin isn't a solution. It's a shutdown tactic. By that logic, nobody is allowed to criticize anything unless their group designed it. That's absurd. Justice isn't about who signed the paperwork decades ago. It's about whether outcomes today are fair to mothers and fathers. Dismissing real concerns with sarcasm isn't empowerment. It's smug intellectual laziness.
I saw you shaking your head.
I just know that my dad got custody of me because he asked for it. And it's a personal experience, it's not everything, but
Sorry, go ahead.
I completely agree that all of the laws that we have, we can vote now, but we're still in a system that was designed by men. So a lot of the issues that we have, that men have, are because of decisions that they made.
But why would you start out assuming 50-50, that both parents want the kid? Because in a lot of cases, men just aren't asking. So wouldn't you want to make the assumption that like the parent who pursues custody is the one who, one, feels empowered to, and two, wants to? Because I agree, like there is a system set up where men probably don't feel empowered to ask for custody of their children, but I think that they should, first of all. But there is a problem, like you can't just say, oh, it's fully the court system's fault. I think there is a culture that encourages young men to just say, oh, well, that's a woman's job. That's, not my job. Not, if the woman wants the kid, she can have the kid. And I don't know why a court would assume that a father just wants to be a father.
So the argument is, if fathers really wanted custody, they'd go to court. But most don't, so clearly they don't want it. That's a wild conclusion. Most men don't avoid custody because they don't love their kids. They avoid court because it's expensive, slow, emotionally brutal, and widely perceived as stacked against them. Lawyers literally tell fathers, unless you're the primary caregiver already, manage your expectations. Add in work schedules, temporary orders favoring the status quo, and the fear of being labeled the villain. And a lot of men choose peace over war. Low participation doesn't mean low interest. It means high barriers. And confusing discouragement with disinterest is how you erase fathers without ever saying it out loud. But hey, that's just my 2 cents.
I was going to say, so wouldn't that culture that would put that on men be a result of feminism? Because men would probably prefer to have the women in their household. And also, women are the ones that are more likely to engage in divorce. So men want to stay with these women.
Engage in divorce?
Yeah.
Like start divorce,
Like
is what you're saying.
Yeah. And men are the ones that actually stay because they want their family together. It is women that actually disrupt the family, and then they get upset with the results of a disrupted family.
Or they just want to keep the woman so that she's running the household. I don't know if it's necessarily I don't know. Men can't function as well without women as women can without a man. So I feel like when he hears divorce is on the table, it's going to disrupt his whole life a lot more. And I feel like that's really what they're thinking about.
We also,
So her response is basically men fear divorce more because women run the household, and women function just fine without men, but men can't function without women. That's not analysis. That's contempt. Reducing men to helpless dependents and women to default adults isn't empowerment. It's caricature. Men don't fear divorce because they lose a house manager. They fear losing daily access to their kids, half their assets, their home, and their identity, often overnight. And let's be real. Men and women struggle differently after divorce. One side isn't superior. One side isn't broken. Saying women do better without men isn't a fact. It's a value judgment dressed up as psychology. And if your argument only works by belittling the other half of the population, maybe it's not as strong as you think.
women do initiate divorce more. The issue is that they also initiate couples therapy. They also initiate seeking every single other alternative before divorce at basically the same rates as we see with divorce rates, right? So yes, women are divorcing. The issue is that like men accepting a loveless marriage with children who are miserable isn't like this thing that we should hold up and go, see, isn't this better? It's like actually all of this is unhealthy, right? It's unhealthy that men have been socialized in such a way that they don't think of themselves as fathers first, that they aren't asking for it, right? Whereas in this way, this is where women have been taught for both good and bad, that you are a mom, right? And I think we default to that, which is harmful to women. But we have to acknowledge that like women are seeking off-ramps in these relationships where divorce happens. And the same issues that they cite for divorce are happening over and over and over again. And this is a systemic issue. It's not just women want to get out of their marriages. It's that women won't tolerate a loveless, empty marriage, which is not even good for children.
So the claim is, women file for divorce more because they try counseling, exhaust every option, and refuse to tolerate a loveless marriage, especially for the kids. But here's the uncomfortable part. Intent doesn't outweigh impact. Decades of research consistently show children of divorce face higher risks, roughly double the likelihood of behavioral issues, higher rates of depression, lower academic outcomes, and weaker, long-term family stability compared to kids raised in intact homes. That doesn't mean divorce is never necessary. Sometimes it absolutely is. But pretending it's neutral or even healthier by default just isn't supported by the data. And when divorce is framed as self-fulfillment over family stability, that's not sacrifice. That's prioritization. Staying isn't always noble. Leaving isn't always brave. And I was unhappy doesn't automatically mean the kids are better off. But hey, That's just my 2 cents.
A loveless, empty marriage, how does the system contribute to what happens in your marriage?
Well, the way that we raise our boys, right, for example, is we teach them that your emotions are bad. So think about the way that we raise young boys. The most common way that young boys express their feelings, it's called externalizing. You see this in clinical data. The way that boys express their feelings, we teach them the only emotion you're allowed to have as a boy is anger. That's the only one allowed. But if you have anger, go to your room. Nobody wants to look at you or deal with you. And so what we've done is we've taught men that their feelings aren't okay, that if they have them, they're isolated and weak for having them. And so the only alternative for them is anger or anhedonia, a complete emptiness and vacuousness. And so in this way, this is how society is contributing to this, because the presumptions we place onto our children that set a course and script for them that destroys their relationships. And men are reporting this. They're lonely, they have less friends, and their marriages don't work out. Men are saying this, not just women.
So the claim is, we raise boys to suppress emotions. Men only feel anger. They're lonely, have fewer friends, and their marriages fail because of it. That story sounds neat, but the data complicates it. Women actually report equal or higher levels of loneliness in many large surveys, despite having more social connections. So loneliness isn't a male-only issue. It's a human one. And if men's marriages are failing, then women's are failing at the exact same rate, because every divorce has 2 people in it. Here's the part nobody wants to touch. Same-sex female marriages have the highest divorce rates of any group. So this can't just be men don't know how to feel. Maybe the issue isn't male emotional repression. Maybe it's modern relationship expectations and chronic dissatisfaction. You don't fix marriage by blaming one gender's emotions. You fix it by asking why commitment isn't fulfilling people the way it used to.
Well, women do say it, so I don't understand why it's always the men, because the men aren't emotional, because the men aren't this. The women are the ones that want to leave. So
but women want to leave, and maybe we should ask them why, because men are responsible for 90% of the violent crime in the U.S. We always talk about women and what we should be doing. I really can't. I talk about feminism a lot, and I get so sick of it because I don't know why we're not talking about men. We're always focusing on women and what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing with men. They're responsible for 95% of domestic violence, 93% sexual assaults and pedophilia, 88% homicides, 85% serial killings, 98% of mass shootings. Could I go on? 77% of assaults. They are responsible for so much, and then we sit here and want to make women feel bad for wanting to leave that man. I don't know why we always are focusing on women all the time.
Okay, this is where the conversation completely derails. She just rattled off crime statistics and used them to explain why women leave men, as if the average husband is interchangeable with the worst criminals in society. That's not analysis. That's collective guilt. Yes, violent crime is overwhelmingly committed by men, by a small, repeat offender subset of men. The same men who are already filtered out of marriages, workplaces, and normal social life. Most men will never commit a violent crime. Most husbands are not abusers. And using extreme criminal behavior to justify everyday relationship breakdowns is intellectually dishonest. If crime stats explain divorce, then lesbians, who have no men involved, would have the lowest divorce rates. They don't. They have the highest. So this isn't about male violence. It's about relationship dynamics, expectations, and dissatisfaction. And here's the real issue when you explain personal unhappiness by pointing to monsters. You avoid accountability. Women don't leave men because of serial killers. They leave for the same messy, human reasons men do: conflict, expectations, resentment, and unmet needs. Blaming half the population for the worst 1% isn't empowerment. It's fear-based storytelling.
Because their solution is always to leave. It's never to
Not
stay
always.
and figure
Sometimes
out-
they want to have therapy, and the man doesn't want to do
Yeah,
that.
and therapy is such BS because you go to a couples therapist and they say, "Oh yeah, you should leave your husband."
That's not
always
the
true.
solution. Yes, that is.
Have you
that
been
is
to couples
always
therapy?
the solution. No, and I will not go to
okay, so
couples
you're just making
therapy.
assumptions.
I have
Great.
heard so many stories. I see it. I've seen it online.
Yeah, if you have a marriage and couples counselor and they are just recommending divorce, which is not true. I've gone to marriage counseling and they didn't recommend divorce. If they're doing that off the hop, that would be unethical. You can actually report them for that. They're trained for more than this. A marriage counselor got trained to see marriages be happy, right? The thing that they want is a fixed, rectified marriage. Sometimes that can't happen for a number of reasons. However, the idea that marriage counselors are just telling women to divorce their husbands is so far from any of the literature that reports on this, so far from the ethics these people are trained on, is basically taking an entire field of care workers and saying, you actually just want to destroy the thing that you care for, which is it's just not true.
So the claim is, couples counseling doesn't push divorce. Even though, yeah, they told me to get divorced. But that's not the goal. You hear how wild that sounds. Look, no one's saying every therapist walks in trying to break marriages. But multiple surveys of marriage counselors show a significant percentage recommend separation or divorce when conflict is high, intimacy is low, or one partner is unhappy. especially if kids aren't the primary focus of the sessions. And here's what men actually hear. Come talk about your marriage, and the possible outcome is losing your family. That's not paranoia, that's risk assessment. Men don't avoid counseling because they hate communication. They avoid it because the system often frames individual happiness as the highest value, not family preservation. Sometimes divorce is necessary, no argument there. But pretending counseling is always neutral or always pro-marriage is just not honest. And when the example used to defend the system is literally, they told me to get a divorce, that kind of proves the concern. But hey, that's just my 2 cents. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like button, subscribe for more conversations they don't want to have, and share this with someone who actually likes thinking. I'll see you in the next one.